Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar on replacing Quest Microsoft tools. We've got a great webinar prepared for you today to share how replacing legacy AD management and recovery with Cayosoft can better secure and protect your Active Directory. So let's get started. First off, I'm McKenna. I work alongside the Microsoft experts here at Cayosoft. Just a couple housekeeping items to go over before we jump into the presentation. First off, you'll notice your microphones are muted to make sure everyone has the optimal listening experience. But we do encourage you to ask any questions you may have. So depending on how you join today, either in the browser or through the app, you'll see a question or chat section in your meeting dashboard. Feel free to drop your questions in there and we'll do our best to answer them. If we do run short on time today, we'll reach out to you individually to follow up. While you're in your meeting dashboard, also make sure to check out our handout section where we've included some additional resources you can download and share with your team. This session will also be recorded and we'll email you a link in the days following. At the end of the presentation, we'll be sharing our contact information. So if you have any additional questions or you're watching this on demand, please reach out to us. At the end of the presentation, we'll also be drawing one lucky winner of a $50 Amazon gift card. Make sure to stay on the line until then, as we draw from the list of those present at that time. Now that we've got that taken care of, let's get started. I'd like to take a moment to introduce today's speaker. With us, we have the founder of Cayosoft, Robert Boble. Bob is one of the leading experts in hybrid Active Directory management and recovery, and with more than 25 years in the Microsoft identity industry, he's gained tons of insight and best practices. So you guys are in great hands today. So on that note, I'll go ahead and get it passed over to Bob.
Hey, thank you, McKenna. I appreciate it. Hey, one other thing that isn't clear from this, Brian, who's joining me today, is going to do the technical side of the demos, and I'm going to do the sort of the introduction to the products and how they map. We both came from Quest, so Brian was one of the architects in engineering, and I was in the product management group running some of the Active Directory management tools. So just to give you some background, we know quite a bit about how those other products are designed and what they were designed for. And when we started this, we decided that those products were designed for the last war, which was the on-premise, servers in your data center war that IT had to fight, and that had changed with hybrid. Hybrid changed everything. So I'm extremely proud of the organization that we built, and I think I'll take a second just to brag about us a little bit. I believe we're probably the foremost Microsoft in not just Active Directory management, but also now in recovery and probably change auditing and entitlement management and treating the Microsoft stack as an identity platform at the enterprise level, not at the sort of mid-market level or the small business level. That's kind of where Microsoft plays with their solutions, but definitely we're here to provide a solution that lets you use your Microsoft platforms, both on-premise and hybrid, and in cloud-only modes as an enterprise solution platform. I think we're known for our innovation. We're going to show you something that I think it's new to us. It's only been out for a little bit, but it's very innovative. We provide excellent support, and I'm going to draw your attention over to the last blue sort of Camford bubble there on the right. We have 98% customer satisfaction rating over our support and services, and we have a 99.8% customer retention. And that's over multiple years. It's not just the last 12 months. I don't believe there's anybody else in our space that has those kind of satisfaction or retention numbers. We are a subscription-based product. We're not SaaS. We're not going to host this in the cloud for you. There's some reasons for that. You can run it in the cloud, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But that's one of the things that allows us to actually help your security, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. I believe one of the best things we do is listen to our customers, and I think that's evident through both our retention of customers and our customer satisfaction. And we are constantly improving our products. I think it was 700 new features or functions last year. I think it was 1,500 the year before. We just constantly innovate around our products, listening to customer requirements and driving those into the product. Some other software companies have a hard time because they've been doing this for so long, and they don't really have goals other than, hey, let's make more products to sell more stuff to more people. We don't really have that approach. We have a little bit different approach. We try to unify things in a way that makes sense and simplify IT management rather than just adding another product that you then have to manage and maintain. We really concentrate on security and supporting your compliance goals. So security and compliance are our first two goals. I would say resiliency and viability of your environment are equally important to us there. They kind of fall under security, so I kind of leave that one out. But we also want to make IT more efficient. So as you're trying to manage these environments, again, we're not going to make you come out and buy 9 products. We have one platform that you can pick up. We call it our map suite. And with 2 installations, you can do all the things that would require 7 or 8 or 9 products from other vendors. And the way we do that is through a single unified approach to management. We don't just manage on-premise. We don't just manage cloud. We manage it all as one continuum. So we're there at every step of your journey, whether you're on-premise, you're in hybrid mode, or you're going to cloud-only mode. Cayosoft is there at every step. Now, in particular, we have 3 categories of functionality: management, monitoring, and recovery. And the first one was the original solution we started back in 2015, I think it was, when we started selling it. It's our administration product, and it provides control over day-to-day administrators and help desk, so that you as the service owner for Active Directory or Azure or Office, you have to provide an enterprise-ready and scalable solution to control how people are interacting with your Active Directories or your applications and settings. We provide that in that first solution that we have. We also allow you to automate very complex tasks, whether that's complete automation, like automatic provisioning of users from an HR system, or just semi-automated, I would call it, where you let somebody create a user and then they do some other steps like provide the department name and maybe the job title and maybe a location. And then in the background, we completely automate tasks like assignments of licenses, putting them in the correct OUs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and doing entitlement management in the background. For example, assigning a phone number. That's one of those things that we see quite a bit of. And this is really designed for you to go to your SOX or HIPAA or PCI, any of those legal or regulatory compliance auditors or what have you, and prove that you're meeting compliance from a management standpoint. So if your requirement is to revoke all access to a user in 15 minutes, that's a deprovisioning task. We have an automation to do that. It's very, very simple. The second one is really around change and monitoring for changes for both communication reasons, because now you have changes happening on premise that might be replicated to the cloud, or you may have different administrators working on different parts of your Microsoft platforms. And so you want to know why somebody was put into domain admins or who put them into domain admins. Or you might want to know when somebody's added to global admins in Azure Active Directory or application admins or whatever it is. Or you may just want to know when the CEO's account has been modified, just for informational purposes. So that's what we have in our monitoring sort of solution. It's a little bit more than just monitoring. So I hedge saying it's just change monitoring. It's a lot more than that. We do provide alerting, so you can build custom alerts or use the out-of-box alerts to look for things. In some of those, we provide out-of-the-box monitoring for threats also, like changes to security at the root level of Active Directory, or escalation of privilege attacks inside of Azure Active Directory. And then we provide a really great interface for you to filter and sort all your changes to go back and identify and get the details. And why I say it's not just change monitoring, because that's also integrated with our rollback or recovery. And so that last piece, in addition to the change monitoring with alerts, we also provide reporting, so you can do some change auditing there, But then with that integration with recovery, we can also do auto remediation. So if there are certain things that should never happen in your environment, maybe a specific group should never be changed. If we detect a change in that group, we can roll that back immediately, far faster than some attacker or somebody internal, some internal threat could use those changes for malicious activities. And that recovery solution is an all-in-one recovery solution. So the simple things that are more common that cause outages or cause problems, changes to group membership, somebody has their license revoked, a bunch of people lose their licenses in office, some groups were deleted, whatever. We do all of that in our recovery solution, and we do it immediately because we're constantly looking for changes and we're recording all changes. We're not using event logs and we're not using snapshots that may miss data between snapshots. We're literally looking for every change and recording those. That then becomes a record of change that we can use to roll back to a previous point in time, or just a simple rollback of one or two attributes. Very, very simple. But then we also, in addition to immediate recovery for object and attributes at a very granular level, we also provide all-in-one recovery for DCs, domains, and for forests. And we call it immediate forest recovery, and Brian's going to show you that here. It doesn't take an hour, it doesn't take a day, it doesn't take a week or a month. It is immediate, and we'll show you how that works on today's demonstration for that component. But I want to talk about first things first, which is the management component. Cayosoft Administrator is our administration tool. This is our roles and rules solution that allows you to have an enterprise identity administration solution or identity governance administration solution that is true hybrid, meaning it manages both AD and Azure AD and a bunch of other things like Teams and Office 365 groups and Office 365 licensing with least privilege model at its heart or at its core. And we also provide zero trust support. So you can use that zero trust to make sure that people only have access or can only be given certain privileges over a certain amount of time, or maybe there's a default time that you allow people to have a certain privilege and then we revoke that. So, and this solution is really targeted at replacing, if we look at it, it's replacing Quest active roles. Well, sorry, they've actually, when they were purchased, when Quest was purchased the second time, not by Dell, but by Francisco Partners, or maybe it was with Dell. At some point it was Dell active roles, then it was this other thing that they were planning on spinning out as a separate company, I believe. It was called One Identity active roles. Sometimes it has a space in it, sometimes it doesn't, because of all the legal issues they had with who owns the name and whatever. It was kind of a mess. That solution, which also required other tools like Quick Connect or their other identity platform, $1 million investment, something crazy like that, when 90% of the companies could use just the active roles component to do most of what was needed to be done. And the password management and self-service component. Those are the two big pieces. And we do have other things in addition to just role-based delegation. We do have rules, easy to configure rules that allow you to control how tasks are done. We do provide time-based memberships or access for users or administrators. We do follow a zero trust model in those cases. We also provide a lot of control over access management and governance. So we do have things like attestation or certification. Do you still need this group? Is the group accurate? Do you still need this team? Is the team accurate? If you want ultimate accuracy and you're using rules to control the data in your directory, then guess what? We also then can automatically assign teams memberships, groups, grant access to applications, et cetera, in an automated way, which takes the human element, the mistake possibilities, or the malicious change vector out as an attack vector. We also provide automation and management for both on-premise users which we call non-hybrid users, hybrid users, which have an identity that is paired together, one on-premise and one in the cloud, and cloud-only users and cloud-only groups. So we pretty much manage everything on both on-prem and cloud in Active Directory and other applications like Exchange. We do IT policy enforcement with automation. So if, for example, you want to make sure all your Active Directory users in one OU have MFA enabled, we have rules that will do things like that. And we do the hybrid work, right? We do the hard work. So you can have a rule that will look at Active Directory on-premise users and then apply security to their mapped accounts in the cloud. Or you can direct those policy enforcement rules directly over at the cloud. Obviously, group management automation is really, really big. So we do provide self-service group management. So one interface for all your on-premise groups and your cloud groups or your Microsoft Teams. We also build groups and automatically populate groups with dynamic groups and families. We provide self-service, I mentioned, and we do have runbook workflows, so you can automate tasks using these things we call a runbook. And then finally, sort of more advanced stuff, we do full license management for Microsoft. We have something called a license profile, so your day-to-day administrators and help desk folks can just literally choose a job code or the job title for a particular individual, and that can then be translated into license assignments, one or more license assignments. So if they're an engineering class one or class one engineer, that could be a license profile that you configure. And the cool part is that it continues to enforce those so that they'll always have the correct licensing, and it won't, nobody will go in and actually directly mistakenly remove the licenses for them. We do also quotas. So if you want to split up your tenant licenses among different business units or groups, you can do that. We also provide license cost optimization and assignment optimization. And what that allows you to do is save up to about 40% of your Microsoft licensing costs by determining what is being used and what the current conditions are of that use for each individual user and the licenses that are currently assigned to them. We have completely modeled in software the license structures that Microsoft uses, and including the costs, could be including the costs you actually pay. And then we figure out, okay, so this person could go from an E5 to an E3, you'll save this amount of money. And oh, by the way, we also have an advisor that tells you whether you can actually make that change, whether they're using one part and they've used too much disk space, or they have an application that can't be moved or is dependent on the other type of license. No one else is doing that. We also look down to the desktop to see what's actually installed on the desktop and being used there as well. I don't believe anybody else is doing that at this point either. Hybrid mailbox management, recipient management, so it's not just user mailboxes, it's shared mailboxes or whatever. Microsoft Teams management, including self-service, so you can provision teams, automatically assign teams, etc. And a complete Microsoft telephony management solution around phone number, DID number assignments. And we do support direct routing. So if you're using an enterprise class, AT&T or Verizon or whatever, providing your phone service, we can manage the phone numbers for you and take care of all of that. Now, I'm going to ask Brian to jump in and help us with a demo here. I don't necessarily need Brian. I don't need you to demonstrate all of the things I was talking about because there's a lot there. But I really want people just to get a taste of how the software looks when an end user is doing changes or whatever. Maybe show us some hybrid something and maybe a quick peek at the dashboard for licensing or something. I don't know. Up to you.
Okay. So can you go ahead and make me presenter?
I have made you presenter.
There it goes. It just showed up. And how's that? Am I sharing?
Yeah, you look good.
All right. Thanks, Bob. And thanks, everyone, for joining. So as Bob mentioned, I just wanted to kind of give you a real quick, very brief little glimpse into the core functionality of what Cayosoft Administrator is all about. And before I start clicking buttons, I like to kind of explain the purpose here. What's the point? So the idea is to bring together a unified, simplified management of your hybrid environment. So your AD users and groups, as well as their corresponding Office 365 synchronized versions of those objects and the licensing and whatnot. So instead of having to use a whole bunch of separate tools like Active Directory users and computers for some things, on-premise Exchange Admin Center for something else, online Exchange Admin Center for something else, Office 365 portal or the Azure portal for something else, we bring all of those things together and we can delegate that. So you can reduce or effectively eliminate all of the additional native permissions for all of those additional people, whether they be departmental administrators needing to manage just things in their own department, or self-service management, for example, group owners or managers or departmental managers, as I mentioned. So that's kind of the core idea, is to bring together in a unified and simplified administration interface and give you the ability to delegate that to lower level administrators or even end users. So the screen that we see here on the left-hand pane, you'll notice I have a bunch of these separate nodes and they look like department names in my case, and that's because they are. So I have accounting and engineering, facilities, and so forth. You can make up whatever names you want. These are what we call our administrative units or admin units. These are the boundaries of delegation. So these how you decide who gets access to what objects. And then also, once you're within one of these admin units, over on the right-hand pane, you'll have a list of actions. And your delegate, when he logs in, may see one or all of these actions or some number in between. So each one of these individual actions is separately delegable. And that user will see the appropriate objects and have the appropriate actions available once they log in. So I'll show you that in a moment. We could also, you notice I already started looking for a user here. So if I look up Sammy, for example, this is an Active Directory user. Of course, you notice what happened. I just did that on accident, but it proves a point here. I'm in the accounting admin unit. I didn't mean to do that, but I looked for Sammy in the accounting admin unit and I found nobody. And that's exactly what I should find because Sammy doesn't live in accounting. So that was my error, but it also helps demonstrate the point. So I'm going to look up Sammy now correctly, and I can manage everything about that user. So all the normal AD properties, so department and job title and description and group memberships and reset password, all that type of stuff. You notice I just clicked on mailbox as well. So the user might have an on-premise mailbox, or they might have an Office 365 cloud mailbox. And we don't have to know in advance. We don't even have to care. You'll notice it figured that out and it opened up and it tells me right at the top here, indeed, that is a remote mailbox. I know that's an Office 365 mailbox. And then I can manage all the normal stuff that I might manage through the Exchange admin tools. So, hide from Gale, archiving, litigation hold, auditing, all the normal stuff, delivery options, restrictions, you get the idea. And it doesn't matter, like I said, if that's on-prem or cloud, I can manage at the same time. I can manage the license, the Office 365 license for that particular user. So I can pick and choose what licensing I'm supposed to assign to them. By the way, this screen is also configurable. Through policy, you can decide what licenses are visible to the delegate, and they could be different for different delegates. So maybe one department has some set of licenses or even a different quantity of licenses. That's all configurable, and then you can pick and choose what's visible, what's allowed to be set, and whatnot. We also have automation rules that can assign licensing as well. And what I'd like to do next is I'm going to sign out, and I'm going to sign in as somebody else. So for example, I have my engineering manager here. When the engineering manager logs in, you'll notice right away that he sees something similar, but a lot less of it. So he sees the engineering admin unit only because he's the engineering admin, he's the engineering manager. He should only see the engineering scope, and he can see users and groups within his own scope and teams as well. So for example, when he goes to manage teams, you'll notice he can only manage the engineering team and nothing else. All the other teams are not available to this particular delegate. And when he looks at users, he'll see only the users that apply to him. The other thing you'll notice is the list of actions is significantly shorter than the list of actions that you saw a minute ago when I was logged in as myself, the overall admin. I'm going to log in as one more person, a user called Sammy. Just to point out one more thing as well, we have some built-in delegation that we talked about before for self-service that allows individual group owners to manage their own groups without having to open tickets or call help desk or anything like that. I can see Sammy as the manager of one group and one group only, so that's it. That's all he will see. Any other groups he will not see in that particular scope. And this is just a real simple reading of AD attributes. So for example, I've got this little dummy group here that I like to play with. And if I set the manager to be Sammy, now all of a sudden he will be able to manage that group as well. Voila, done. So it's really, really simple. That's just a built-in delegation that's there for you. By the way, that extends to lots of other types of objects, including cloud objects and users. So individual user managers can manage those things as well. I mentioned we also have a bunch of automation. I'm not going to show you that side of it today, but we can do reporting and bulk updates and bulk license assignments and all those types of things as well. We can also manage groups dynamically. So you can build a set of rules that say anybody that meets criteria A, B, C, D, and E, they should either be added to this group or removed from this group, and that will happen automatically and be maintained on an ongoing basis. And I think that's probably about the main core of what I wanted to show you. I'm going to leave off by creating a user here. So I'm going to say, let's create one new user. Again, this is hybrid. So I'm just going to make up a user. And you notice it defaulted. I already have my default OU set, so it's going to be created in that particular OU. Every admin unit can have a different default, or you can also automate that process as well. I'm going to make up a new user here. And by the way, you'll notice that all I do is provide the name, the first and the last name. All the rest of the name detail is pre-built for me. And then I can decide, is this account getting a mailbox? So I can give an on-premise mailbox, I can give them a remote mailbox, and all of these buttons are configurable as well. Once I decide that they're going to have a remote mailbox or an Office 365 mailbox, then I need to also assign licensing. You notice I have some default licensing applying for me automatically. I'm going to add to that, give them an F3 license. So we can do this all manually this way. And as Bob mentioned earlier, we also have the ability to kind of package those together into what we call a profile, a license profile, and then you can just assign it as one unit. That's just another option for configuration. When I go to the next page, I have a few more settings that I might decide how I want applied. Pretty standard stuff here. And then the final page is all of the attribute data. So I can put them in a certain department. I can make up a title. By the way, we can also do things like controlling the input, the data entry. So we have things like drop-down list, formatting rules, make fields required, other things like that. I'm going to go ahead and put this person in marketing, and we can make up an office, and we can make up an employee ID. Let's go ahead and do that. And then I said employee type as well. Let's make them a contractor. And then I made up another attribute here that I called billing code. And what I've done in my case, I've just mapped this to extension attribute 15. And that's just how I decided to go with it in my particular case. But the point is, it's customizable. You can add attributes however you like, and you can decide what actual AD attributes those correspond to. So that'll take about 15 seconds or so to complete that process, and then I'll show you the net result of that user creation. And then I think that will wrap it up for this particular section. I probably already have. I'm going to jump over here while that's running. I'm going to jump over here to my native AD. And you can see right there, the account is already created. I'm going to open that account up. And you'll see all the detail is populated. The account information is populated with the appropriate names. Remember, I gave him a job title. I gave him a department. And I also, if you remember, I gave him an employee ID, which is right there. The employee type is set. I said I was setting the billing code, which I mapped to extension attribute 15. All of that is all completely done. And I'm going to jump back over to my cloud side here. And I'm going to take a look, see if the account exists in the cloud yet. I get my browser to go just a little bit faster. And there is that account. The licensing hasn't appeared yet. It'll get there in a few moments. So if I refresh a couple times, the license will show up. I won't bother waiting for that. It'll be another 10 seconds or so. But anyway, that's about it. Bob, you have any other questions or you want to see something else?
Nope, we need to go on. So thank you very much, Brian. Appreciate that.
By the way, you can see my licensing showed up there.
Yeah. All right, I've switched back over to the presentation. We'll continue. All right, so that covers Cayosoft Administrator. That is our active roles, password management, governance management solution. So I want to talk about sort of the second column we fall into, which is change monitoring and object recovery. And that's done through our Cayosoft Guardian product. This is our second product that we built. It does integrate in several ways with Administrator. It will allow you to delegate over the native recycle bins. So you can let people only, for example, may only want them to be able to undelete users that they have permissions over or that they deleted themselves, rather than saying all deleted users in those recycle bins. We also do integration with the change auditing so that any changes made through Administrator are presented in Guardian as well, so that you can see not only a change history within Cayosoft Administrator, but also within Guardian for what's going on in Cayosoft Administrator. So in this particular case, I mentioned it's change monitoring and object recovery. I use the word monitoring a little loosely. It could be considered change auditing too. I think the difference is that we're not really focused on building paper-based reports. We're building information from a change history database that we construct that will catch things a little bit differently than what you might get with event logs, and I'll explain why. This is, again, a true hybrid product, so one install gives you monitoring and object and attribute recovery over hybrid Active Directory, or Azure Active Directory, and a lot of the associated services, right? So if, for example, you make a change, like a security change to some of the security settings on a Microsoft team, we see those, we can do a rollback on them. So it's not just AD, Azure AD. It also includes a lot of the Office application settings. And the idea behind Guardian was, while Administrator is there to protect your directory from your administrators and internal threats, this solution is really designed to protect you from, or protect the directories and applications from not just internal threats, but external threats and mistakes made between the senior administrators, right? So this one is really designed to be used by more senior administrators to see what's going on within the systems that they're responsible for servicing, or services they're responsible for maintaining. The other tool is really around controlling the people who are interacting with the data in Active Directory and those other applications, creating users, creating groups, etc. This solution is designed to provide an alternative to Quest Change Auditor for AD and Change Auditor Online, or their Change Auditing Online, because it does support AD on-premise and Active Directory in the cloud, Azure Active Directory in Office, Teams, etc. And it also is designed to replace the original Quest Recovery Manager for Active Directory and the on-demand version as well. So instead of two different change auditing tools, you can replace both of those with Guardian, and at the same time replace Recovery Manager and Recovery Manager on Demand, two of those with this solution as well. And we do have a little bit more maturity, I think, in some of these areas. We'll definitely see that when we get to forest recovery. But the idea, there are three key features here that I want to cover real quick. Change monitoring with alerting. There are some pre-built change alerts that we have in the system. We alert you in Teams, which Brian's going to show you, or through an email, right? So it could be Exchange, could be right in Teams with a link that takes you right to those changes we detected that you wanted to alert on. You can make your own alerts. You can also create saved queries. So if you're just looking to run a report and you actually need a physical report, you can build a query to look for whatever, accounts that were created in the last 24 hours in a particular department. That could be one of those reports you create. Starts with a query. You can output that as a report, have it delivered weekly to your inbox. So that's kind of nice. Or maybe a certain group becomes critical and you want to have a real-time alert. You can take that same query and convert it into a real-time alert, and you'll be alerted every time a new account is created, for example. This also provides immediate object and attribute recovery. So this is kind of where it's like Recovery Manager. So the first goal up there was talking about sort of change auditing, change monitoring, and alerting, and this one's now talking about backup and recovery. In this particular case, the base Guardian product doesn't require snapshots. You don't have to schedule a backup at midnight every night. And the best part is because it's not a file-based or snapshot-based change history log or change history database, you don't have to do things like comparison. You don't have to worry about a change being made, after the last backup and then being reversed. And so there's no record of the change, right? Like Recovery Manager would have, because they're not dealing with looking constantly at the directory. So you could have changes that are made after the backup is done at midnight to 1 a.m. Somebody makes a change, lets them do something, they put the change back. You'll never see that. And you don't have to do comparisons to the live directory. You don't have to mount files. So it gets rid of all the overhead of having to manage backup files or snapshots, and provides that object or attribute level recovery. Now, just to bring back an object, you can use the recycle bins. They're undelete. That's what Microsoft's AD and Azure AD recycle bins do. But they can't, those recycle bins can't bring back the data. So if group memberships are changed or licenses are stripped from all your users, somebody does a denial of service attack and they write a PowerShell script that removes all of your Office 365 licenses or whatever it might be. Those bulk recoveries can be done with these types of solutions. You can't really use the native tools to do these types of things. And the native tools have holes in the logs. And keep in mind that if you're using like a SIEM tool or just an event analysis tool or an auditing tool that relies on events, those are usually the first place that attackers hit, because they want to blind you to the other changes they're making, either to move laterally or to perform the nefarious tasks they're going to use. So with a TrueHybrid architecture, you get the benefit of being able to see changes that happen on-premise in Active Directory that get copied up into the cloud with Azure AD Connect. You get to see cloud-only changes to users that may not have been made in a correct way on-premise. You don't have to rely on logs. So things that are not logged, there are several items, both on-premise and cloud, that are famously not logged. Or if the logs are being attacked, wiped out, cleared, you're not going to miss these changes. I still believe you need both logs and this continuous data directory protection or system protection, simply because you need the two in combination. So I would suggest that a SIEM tool like Microsoft Sentinel plus Guardian would be like the best thing you could do, because if Guardian is sitting there monitoring everything and Sentinel gets hit and it gets taken out or the logs get disabled, then you always have a backup, and Guardian can come back and say, hey, wait a minute, these changes were detected and there are no correlated events. So that's the final thing I'll mention. We do correlated events here as well. And what that means is that not only are we looking for live changes in the systems continuously, right? We're always looking for new changes in the directory or in Teams or in whatever it might be, office settings, conditional access policies, domain admins, enterprise admins groups, whatever. We also collect event data from both on-premise Active Directory, Azure Active Directory, and Office. And then we use that to start to correlate to get as much fine-grained detail around what is actually going on as possible. So there's a lot going on here with this change history database. It's super fast, it's immediate. Somebody gets alerted to a change, they look at the change, they don't like it, they can hit a button and it'll immediately roll it back. You can also, as I mentioned earlier, set up automatic responses. So if something was never supposed to change and it suddenly changes, we can automatically do that with a special rollback rule. Now, I want to jump in and have Brian work on our next demonstration so you can kind of see the change auditing, monitoring piece, the alerting piece, and maybe a simple rollback. Remember, the most common type of user outage is caused because some mistake was made in managing the data in your directories or a setting in your Office applications or Exchange. So this is sort of part one of making a total all-in-one recovery solution. The basics for change monitoring and object recovery are sort of the piece Brian's going to demonstrate, and he may actually have another piece that he is going to open up so that we can prepare to show you in real time on this a full forest recovery as well. Brian, I've gone ahead and made you presenter if you'd like to switch over and share.
Okay.
Looks
Are we
good.
looking good?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, beautiful. So switching gears now. So we talked about administration or management. So now what we're looking at is monitoring or auditing. Basically, what we're doing in this case is we're capturing changes that occur in on-premise AD or in Azure AD. We're capturing those changes as they occur and writing them back to our database so you can see that change history very quickly. You can create, from that data, you can then create reports based on specific criteria. So all the changes in a certain time frame or to a certain object or made by a certain person or any of that type of thing. You can see this is the dashboard. In my case, I've got my Azure tenant added to monitoring, and I've got 3 AD domains that are also added. You can add, multiple on both sides. And the net result is, when I look at my change history, I will see a running list of all of the changes that have occurred. And as they come in, they'll show up at the top. And by the way, remember, not too long ago, we had just created, I'll find it, right? Almost had it. There it is. There it is. I could have searched it, but I was too lazy, so I was just browsing because I knew there wasn't that much data. But there's that user that we just created not too long ago, and obviously there's been several other changes that have coming in since then. But the idea is, once you have a lot more data coming and you want to go back days or longer, you need to use some kind of filtering to find something of interest. So as an example, I might want to see only the changes that happened in the last 7 days, and perhaps I'm only interested in creation, so I can search for create object, and then I can be more specific and say, I don't want any object, I really only care about users for this particular query. So there we go, now I've got only users that were created in the last 7 days. And you can see at the very top is the one you would expect, the one that we just created not too long ago. By the way, I can then save this, give it a name, something like that. I never trust my typing, and that's why. But there we go, users created in the last 7 days. I can go ahead and save that. And then I can toggle back and forth between my saved queries. So you'll notice there are a bunch of built-in queries that are already here. And then here's that one at the bottom that I just created. So it tells me who created it, and there's that. So I can jump back and forth to it at any point. I could just select it, say, yep, I want to go to that one. You could also then create reports from there. Or, so for example, I could say, let's turn this into a new report. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do one more. I'm going to create another one, and I'll create a report on that one just to make it a little more interesting. So I'm going to create one brand new one. First thing I'm going to do is clear my criteria, and let's start a new one. Let's say I want 7 days again. This time I'm interested in only deletions. And again, I'll stick with object type of user. And then I can save this one as well. So this will be users deleted. Something like that. And then I can say, let's turn this into a report. I can create a new report. And then you can say, what type of format do you want? Do you want it delivered via email? You know, all these kind of things. And then you can also set up a schedule. So maybe I want this every week, and it's going to come every 8 a.m., maybe on Mondays. Save that. And so I don't have to do anything more with that. It's just going to run every Monday at 8 a.m., automatically deliver that to me. I can run that on demand as well and send the email. And then you can also create a new alert. And what an alert will do is send you a notification right away when a new change comes in matching that criteria. So let's just name this one a little bit more appropriate. Call it user deleted. And again, we can do the same thing. We can notify via Teams or email or both, like this is in my case. And let's go ahead and save that. And so I've got some stuff configured here. I'm going to also just start making a couple of little changes. So let's take Norm and let's change his office. So instead of Seattle, it's going to be someplace else. And then let's pick out somebody else. Like here's another user. Let's check their group membership. I can see they got a couple of groups. Let's go ahead and add them to another group. In this case, I'll make it kind of an important group there, the domain admin group. And you get the idea. I won't bother with a bunch of other changes. But as those changes occur, I'll see stuff rolling in. In fact, you see an alert showing up at the top of my screen here already, right in the Guardian console. Alert telling me, I don't know if you can read that on your end or not, but it tells me member added to the group, domain admins, and it tells me the name of that user. I'll also see, if I hit the refresh button, oh, you know why I don't see that yet? It's because I have it filtered. So let me remove my filter because I'm still on my previous deleted user filter. But anyway, now I'm back to everything. So I can see my Norm Peterson change. If I open up that change, I can see, there we go. The office was changed from that value to that value. And if I think that's no good, that's a bad change, that should not have happened, I can just say restore, done, and that's fixed. So that takes care of that. And then also the domain admin group, that's kind of a more of a critical change. So that's why it's highlighted with the little red ball here, indicating that was a critical alert. So a notification was sent. Same thing, I can open up this item. I will see the domain admin group itself was modified and this member was added. I can go ahead and restore that, or I can also do the same thing from the user. So in this case, it was a group membership change, so we'll see the change from both perspectives. So the user was added to the domain admin group, and also the group had the user added to it. So either way, depending on which way you want to report, you can get the result, the same result. And also, you can restore from either of those options, and it'll take care of that. Oh, by the way, if I look at my email, you see there's the report that we had generated for user deletions, and here's the alert that came in when I added that Carla user to the domain admin group. I also saw the same alert showing up in Teams, so right there is my brand new alert that showed up in my Teams. So all of that is just based on your own configuration. And if I happen to go back and check the forgot which user it was. It was Norm. Remember, we moved him to, I think it was Miami, but now he's back to Seattle where he's supposed to be. And also we had added Carla to that domain admin group, and she's no longer there. We fixed that with the rollback. And then also, remember I turned on an alert for deletions, at least I think I did. Let's take this Robert guy that we just created not too long ago and delete that account. So we'll see if I didn't mess anything up when I configured that, that particular item. I'll give it a few seconds. So there we go. There's my Robert deletion. You see he's got the red indicator. I've got the alert showing up at the top here as well. And I have another new email telling me that Robert was deleted. And I have the same notification as well in Teams. So all of that is working beautifully as it should. And that's kind of a quick sneak peek at object and attribute monitoring, auditing, rollback, recovery, whatever you want to call it. In our next section, we're going to talk about an entire full forest recovery. So your AD, catches cold and it catches pneumonia and then it dies. So you need to bring back a new AD from nowhere. So that takes a little bit more time. So I'm going to start in advance here. I'm going to jump over to my Guardian recovery plan. I'm going to select my recovery plan and I'm going to say run. And you'll see that process starting. And then we're going to switch back over and let Bob give you some details around this, and then we'll come back and see the results.
Great, Brian. So we're kind of setting ourselves up here for the next demonstration. Excellent. I'll go ahead and show my presentation once again. Now we're going to talk about Guardian Forest Recovery. So we have had two slides already, one for Cayosoft Administrator, which is the management solution. And then we talked about Guardian, which is change monitoring and object recovery, object and attribute recovery. And then we have this other one here called Guardian Forest Recovery. So we're very well connected to our customers, and it is clear while some people only really need object and attribute recovery because they're working on maybe a portion of Active Directory, or maybe they're not the folks that are dealing with Active Directory. They're really only worried about outages caused by changes to policies or licensing or group memberships. And also to follow maybe a little bit more simplified deployment pattern, we've created a license option that takes the Cayosoft Guardian product and adds quite a bit to it to do forest-wide Active Directory recovery. And so the idea is that when you get Guardian Forest Recovery, you get everything in the basic Cayosoft Guardian, but we also add this ability to recover if you're hit with a ransomware or wiper attack where your directory, as Brian put it, caught cold and died, right? It has had some disaster occur where you've either lost a domain controller that you want to bring back that's critical, or you've lost a domain, or you've lost your entire forest. And those are very common now. We kind of see them all the time. The first one I had really heard about that was very popular was the shipping company called Maersk. And it was quite devastating for them. And it took them 9 or 10 days to just get Active Directory back up and going. And once you get AD going, that's always the first step because that's where your user accounts are. Then you can start to recover your SQL servers, your applications that are all tied into that, right? Get your directory sync going again and getting back up to the cloud. Now, a lot of people are just trying to use their cloud directory as the backup, and that really doesn't work because if you didn't have anything on premise that you were counting on, you wouldn't need the on-premise directory in the first place. So this is a true hybrid solution, just like the base product that this sits on top of. It actually doesn't sit, it's just a license option that reveals more of the product. So they're fully integrated. But when you look at sort of where this is targeted, it's still change auditor for Active Directory and the cloud component, right? The on-demand component, recovery manager for AD and recovery manager on demand. And I'll point out that while our competitors talk about having integrated solutions, they're actually separate solutions which take separate management. They have separate interfaces with this weird connector between them, so you can try and jump back and forth. If you've ever seen the hybrid exchange console, it's kind of like that, where it's really a UI trick. It's not really a great method for doing integration. You want to build your solution to be hybrid or cloud only from the start to really get the benefit. Then we have, and I never did understand why they had all these pieces, but I guess it makes sense if you're trying to make money. Quest Recovery Manager Forest Edition and Quest Recovery Manager Disaster Edition. We basically do everything they do. There are some use cases that don't make a lot of sense. Bare metal backup and recovery doesn't make sense because it likely inherits any kind of virus or compromise that took out your directory in the first place. And there's some other things like that we just don't do because that's legacy and obsolete and people don't do it. So let's talk about why this is such a great solution. Well, it was very clear for the last 6 years after MRSC happened that the faster you get Active Directory working, the faster your people are going to have logins again, and you don't want to bring back whatever compromise was that wiped out your directory in the first place with that. But you need to do that as quick as possible. So most companies say that they want to get you recovered in a day. We believe that because we had immediate data access and we're very, I think, knowledgeable about how backup technology works, we decided that we would try to go for the fastest recovery time possible. And I believe we are now the fastest way to recover your directory. Brian's going to show you something that takes about 10, 15 minutes to immediately recover after your directory is gone. But it's not something where you have to wait. You saw Brian hit one button to initiate the recovery, and we're going to talk about how that happens. So we believe it's the fastest recovery possible to get you up and going in an hour, less than an hour, depending on the size of your directory and how many things you're recovering. It recovers all your directory objects, obviously. So you have object and attribute recovery if that's the problem you're facing, or you have full forest recovery where we're capturing a lot of the files and things that are required to bring back a domain controller, your domain, your DNS, your forests. And we make it really easy to deploy. So it's one install. It takes about 5 minutes maybe to run the installer, and then you configure, right? So the install takes almost nothing. You don't necessarily have to have the level of permission that you'd require with the Quest solutions. You do have to have access to domain controllers, but the way we do recovery, we don't require you to use on-premise VMs or hardware, and we also build a recovery site for you in Azure Active Directory, which means you don't have to worry about setting up VMs that are going to be compatible with the DCs that you're already running. So there's issues with I have 2012 over here and 2016 here. We take care of all of those things that are needed to make sure that the Azure VM that's going to become your recovery site are done correctly. Now, by recovering to Azure, you have an isolated recovery site, isolated from both the attackers, if it is an attack, and also isolated from your production network, which isn't as important during recovery as it is to test the recovery, right? So in addition to immediate forest recovery, domain recovery, DC recovery, and object and attribute recovery, the way we do the recovery to an Azure site makes it very easy to trial our software without fear of having one of your main domain controllers duplicated with IP addresses and names on your same collision domain on your network, because it's now in an Azure isolated network. If it was a recovery scenario, you just patch in Azure to your on-premise network, which you may have already done. So you may just be allowing that site to be seen, right? So your DCs, all your on-premise machines are wiped out, you open up the ports or whatever you need to do to make sure the recovery site's seen by everybody, and then suddenly it all starts working again. It's a very, very fast way to do it. And those isolated virtual labs make a great place to create a lab for testing applications before you do upgrades, testing your DR for Active Directory itself. So you could run a recovery every day if you wanted to, right? So that, that's the cool part. And then because it's isolated, you don't have all those conflicts that might cause issues and cause a production issue just by testing your recovery. So a couple of other things I'll mention really quickly. This doesn't just let you do forest recoveries. We allow you to define what we call multiple backup plans. So you could have a backup plan that just gets maybe the 4 domain controllers that are FSMA role holders for you, those special DCs. Or you could decide you want to back up every single domain controller and have a different backup plan for, restoring every DC. Maybe you just want to build a test lab. So you just want to go grab one domain controller, recover it to a lab, and then seize all the roles. That way you have one DC, and maybe then you use that to test upgrades of other applications. And then we have separate recovery plans as well. So Brian's going to show all this to you so you can see how quick it is in a brief demonstration. And he's going to go through just sort of what we had to do to configure it, which is very little. And we'll get to showing you a full forest recovery like within the time frame of this demo, which is less than an hour. Brian, with that, I'm going to switch you over to the presenter.
Okay. We back up?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, you can see my my forest recovery is still in process, but it is moving along pretty nicely. So you can see all these green check boxes here, all the steps that were involved in going through the recovery process. So I'm going to come back to this in a minute, but we start out by taking backups. So we install Guardian, the same Guardian that we talked about in our last segment there, where we audit changes and do attribute level rollbacks and undelete objects and all that kind of stuff. It's the same product, just additional licensing for the forest recovery component. And now I define a backup. So I set up a scheduled backup, tell it what domains I want backed up, and it will, back those up. And then from there, I can decide if I need to recover. Hopefully that, this is like disaster, right? We don't want this to happen, but if it does, you'd rather have the ability to recover than just be out in the cold. So the idea is,
Brian,
go ahead.
Can I ask a question? Without a tool, what do people do to recover their directory?
Well, without a tool, they don't.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was hoping to prompt you into saying something about their recovery white paper. So Microsoft has a 26-page, I would call it a set of guidance. I wouldn't call it a recovery plan. It's a guidance. No automation, no scripting, no nothing like that. But it describes all of the things that you need to do for recovery. And a lot of those require pre-planning and setting things up ahead of time versus all the things you see here, which are just the recovery part, not even the backup part, but all that is automated, right? So you could go through their guide and write some PowerShell scripts or start to try and implement their guide. But again, if you don't do it ahead of time, like months ahead of time, you're not going to be successful. Ours, you can put it in, and within an hour of grabbing your first domain controller, you have a recovery solution.
Yep.
So that's what I wanted to point out. There are other recovery tools out there in the market today. Quest is definitely one of them, but all of them rely on sort of legacy backup or snapshot technology. And they don't have this super fast ability, and none of them at this time have Azure site recovery, which makes it immediate rather than 4, 5, 6 hours for recovery. Sorry,
Yep.
Brian, didn't interrupt, but
yeah, you can see my recovery has completed now successfully, and it took 12 minutes and 5 seconds actually, but 12 minutes. So again, we started with the backup. Now in my particular case, I've got two domains. So I've got my root AD domain, and then I have a child domain. And so when I try to recover, I could recover, all of my domain controllers, but for the first step of the recovery, I really don't care about all of the domain controllers. I really just need to get one DC from each domain. Just all I care about at the moment, I need to get back in business. Let's get back online, get operational, and then I can go about, adding additional domain controllers or doing any of the normal, AD architecture stuff that I might want to do later. But all I care about for the immediate situation is I need to get back in business. So that's what we've done here. Yeah. And we've kind of really with this Azure site recovery concept, we've really made it super simple and easy. So I'm going to jump to my Azure side here for a moment, look at my resources. So basically all I have to do when I tell it to recover, all I have to do is point at my backup and say, yes, I want to go to Azure. That's it. That's all I have to do. And as soon as my Azure browser here finishes loading, I'll show you what I'm talking about. I don't know why it takes forever to load up the resource page. Almost there. Okay, so all of this stuff, virtual machines and IP addresses and network adapter, all this junk, this did not exist. I had to do literally zero over here on the Azure side. So I started with this empty, there was nothing here. And then when I created my recovery plan, I clicked this little button right here. You notice it says redeploy recovery site. Initially it just said deploy, and I already did that in advance. It took about 6 minutes, I believe, to deploy the recovery site. That is what put all of these resources, created the resource group and then put all these resources out here. And then you just saw me run the actual recovery itself. That went and used those resources to repopulate from my backup, repopulate my AD into that Azure recovery site. And so now I have all that stuff available. And if I go, where's my root DC there, right there. The moment of truth. Let's see if it actually works.
So this is the DC that is still in your production that you've recovered to this isolated Azure site.
Yeah.
And I assume you're going to go log into it.
Yeah, that DC.
Or connect to it.
Yeah, that DC. It's actually. You see, I've got my Guardian machine here, and I've got a root DC. It's this machine. This could be caught fire and exploded and gone. That's kind of the whole idea. If this machine was still valid, I wouldn't need to do a recovery. But I'm assuming my on-prem AD is toast and it's gone. So now I've recovered. Now I've got a new DC here. I'm gonna go ahead and connect to it.
And while Brian's connecting to that, I'm going to mention a couple other real quick things. It's interesting because we're not using snapshots or bare metal backups. We've created a situation where our backup is extremely small. So instead of 17 gigs to get a basic server that has Active Directory, we're less than a couple of 100 megabytes. And we don't reinfect because we're not bringing any operating system components over. We're just bringing the things that are needed to recover Active Directory. So when he logs into that, he's going to see a clean, brand new operating system installed with the existing Active Directory. By reducing those sizes of the backups, it also means that you have less data to transfer from on-premise to cloud, which means the backup process happens quicker and the recovery process happens as fast as possible. And again, as I mentioned before, you get this ideal backup with a clean restore anywhere. Clean restore meaning without the virus reinfecting or the attack, the ransomware encrypting the box. So yeah, looks like you're in it.
Yeah, and you notice that I did log in with my own account, so it's the recovery clearly worked because I just logged in with my own specific account. So I'm going to open up AD now just to verify. Let's go ahead and turn on my description bar, and then I'm also going to make my filter as big as it'll go, because this wasn't just a simple, empty domain. I wanted to test and make sure it's actually working. So I've got 25,000 test users, and it looks like they're all here. It's loading, loading, loading. It should go to 25,000 users. Almost there. Voila, there they are. All of my users are here, and I have 25,000
Awesome.
groups as well, by the way. So
Awesome.
I'll let those go too.
Totally awesome. All right, Brian, we'll switch back over. Thank you, Brian. That was great. You now have all witnessed, in a very short amount of time, a full forest recovery, multi-domain full forest recovery, just that fast. And because Brian put users in there, I would guess that the majority of people aren't going to have 25,000 users or groups. So I'm guessing the 50,000 objects is pretty representative of users, groups, computers, contacts that probably more than most people have if we look at the size of customers that we typically see doing this. So, but keep in mind, when Active Directory on-premise goes out, your hybrid environment breaks, and frankly, your employees who rely on Active Directory for access to everything they do nowadays is gone. So when Active Directory stops, your business stops. And you can imagine being completely out of business. Let's say you're a retail manufacturer like Target, and suddenly you're out of business for a month because somebody hacked your cash registers because they had backdoor access to Active Directory. That is, billions of dollars in damage for the largest companies, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, for the average size company. So great job, Brian. Thank you so much. So I'm going to switch back over to my system, and we will walk us out here. So I wanted to share with you very quickly some other people, other organizations that trust us. About 50% of our business is replacement of legacy tools, not just Quest. There are other organizations out there that other vendors out there with very similar situation. Instead of building tools for hybrid and cloud, they build a cloud tool because they thought it was fast. Now they're paying the price because people went hybrid rather than just jumping straight to cloud. And with that, I'm going to ask McKenna. I'm going to ask McKenna. With that, I'm going to ask McKenna to close up the session.
Thanks, Bob. All right, so that concludes our presentation today. We'd like to thank everyone for their time and hope you all enjoyed the webinar. At this time, we'll go ahead and take attendance for the gift card drawing. We will email the winner directly for more information. If you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to us with the contact information listed at the top right of the screen. We've also listed 2 links on the screen for you. If you'd like to schedule a personalized demo with one of the experts here at Cayosoft, feel free to visit that /demo. Also, if you'd like to see how we compare on pricing, we've included that link to request a quote. And of course, for more information about our products and solutions, visit our website, cayosoft.com. Again, thank you so much for your time, and everyone have a great day.